Have you ever shared good news with a friend and something felt slightly off? They smiled. They said, "I'm so happy for you." They even congratulated you. But there was a pause, a hesitation so small you almost ignored it. Their eyes didn't fully match their words. Their energy shifted just for a moment, and you told yourself, "I'm overthinking." But what if you weren't? What if some friendships are not built only on connection, but also on quiet comparison? Not loud, obvious rivalry, not open hostility, but something softer, hidden, almost invisible. A silent competition. This is one of the most complex and painful psychological realities of human relationships. Friends who secretly compete with you, and the truth is, most of the time, they don't even realize they're doing it. Because competition between friends rarely lives in conscious words. It lives in subconscious emotions. It shows up in subtle ways. Like when you achieve something important, and instead of celebrating you fully, they quickly mention their own achievement. "Oh, that's amazing. By the way, I also got an opportunity last week." Or when they downplay your success with phrases like, "Yeah, but it's not that hard. You just got lucky. Anyone could do that." It sounds harmless on the surface, but emotionally, it feels like something is being taken away from you. Your moment becomes smaller. Your light becomes dimmer, and you start questioning yourself. This happens because of a psychological principle called social comparison theory. Humans naturally evaluate themselves by comparing with others, especially people close to them. Not strangers, not celebrities, friends, because friends exist in the same psychological category as us. Same environment, same starting line, same possibilities. Your success becomes evidence of what is possible, and sometimes it becomes evidence of what they haven't achieved. This creates an uncomfortable inner conflict inside them. On one side, they genuinely care about you. On the other side, your progress forces them to confront their own insecurities. This is the paradox of human relationships. Love and envy can exist at the same time. Care and competition can exist in the same heart. A person can support you consciously and compete with you subconsciously. And this doesn't make them evil. It makes them human, but it does make the friendship emotionally complicated. Think about this. Why does criticism from strangers rarely hurt as much as subtle negativity from friends? Because friends are part of our emotional identity. Their approval feels like safety. Their disapproval feels like rejection. So when a friend secretly competes with you, your nervous system senses it. Even when your logical mind denies it, you feel slightly unsafe being fully yourself. You start shrinking your success. You hesitate before sharing good news. You downplay your achievements to protect the friendship. Not because you're weak, but because human beings are wired for belonging. We would rather shrink ourselves than risk losing connection. This is called self-silencing, and it's one of the most painful psychological sacrifices people make in competitive friendships. They pretend to be smaller, so the friendship can survive. But here is the deeper truth most people don't realize. People who secretly compete with you are often not competing with you. They are competing with a version of themselves they wish they could be. You become a mirror, a reminder, a reflection of their unrealized potential. And mirrors can be uncomfortable, because mirrors don't lie. This is why sometimes friends subtly discourage your growth. Not directly, not aggressively, but quietly. They might question your decisions. They might express doubt when you feel confident. They might highlight risks when you feel excited, not because they want to harm you, but because your growth changes the balance of the relationship. Growth creates emotional distance, and distance creates fear, because some friendships are unconsciously built on a quality of struggle, not a quality of happiness. As long as both people are stuck, the bond feels safe. But when one person evolves, it threatens the emotional structure. This is why sometimes your biggest personal growth reveals the true, emotional nature of your friendships. Success doesn't just change your life, it reveals people. It reveals who feels inspired by your growth and who feels threatened by it. It reveals who claps with their whole heart and who claps with quiet hesitation. And the most confusing part is this: they may still love you, they may still care about you, but their unconscious insecurity creates emotional friction. This creates a strange emotional atmosphere. You can't point to anything specific. There's no obvious betrayal, no clear conflict, just a feeling, a subtle emotional tension. And feelings are often the most honest signals we have because before the mind understands, the nervous system already knows. The question is, have you ever felt yourself becoming smaller around certain friends? Without knowing why? And what happens to a person when they slowly learn that their growth makes others uncomfortable? That's where the real psychological story begins. What hurts the most is not when enemies doubt you, it's when friends do. Not openly, not directly, but subtly, quietly, indirectly. Sometimes it's in the way they go silent when you share something meaningful. Sometimes it's in the way they change the topic too quickly. Sometimes it's in the lack of enthusiasm where you expected warmth, and you feel confused, because this is someone who once celebrated your smallest wins. So what changed? The answer lies in a painful psychological truth. Familiarity creates an identity expectation. People unconsciously become comfortable with a specific version of you, the version they met when you were less confident, the version of you who was still figuring things out, the version that felt equal, predictable, and emotionally safe. But when you evolve, when you become more confident, more disciplined, more successful, you stop matching the identity they were used to. And this creates psychological discomfort, not because they hate your growth, but because your growth disrupts their internal story of who they are in relation to you. In psychology, this is connected to something called self-evaluation maintenance theory. This theory explains that when someone close to us succeeds in an area that matters to our identity, it can threaten our self-esteem. If your friend secretly wanted to be successful, and you become successful first, your success becomes a mirror reflecting their delay, not their failure. Their delay. But the human brain often interprets delay as inadequacy, and instead of consciously admitting this insecurity, the mind protects itself through subtle emotional defense mechanisms, minimizing your achievement, downplaying your effort, finding flaws in your progress, not to hurt you, but to protect their own sense of worth. This is not always intentional. It's emotional self-defense, because the ego doesn't like feeling left behind. But here's the deeper layer most people never talk about. Sometimes the competition isn't about success. It's about identity. In many friendships, people unconsciously assign roles. One person becomes the funny one. One becomes the struggling one. One becomes the confident one. One becomes the helper. These roles create psychological stability. But when you change, when you outgrow your old role, it creates identity confusion in the relationship. If you were once the insecure one and now you become confident, the friend who was once more confident loses their unconscious identity advantage. And identity loss is terrifying for the human psyche, because identity is how we understand our place in the world. So sometimes, without realizing it, people subtly try to pull you back into your old role. They remind you of your past mistakes. They treat you like the old version of yourself. They resist fully acknowledging your transformation, not because they want you to fail, but because your change forces them to change too. And change is uncomfortable. This creates a quiet emotional paradox. The more you grow, the more alone you may temporarily feel. Not because growth isolates you, but because growth reveals emotional misalignment. You start noticing things you never noticed before. The lack of genuine excitement, the subtle comparisons, the invisible tension, and the most painful part is this. You begin questioning yourself. Am I imagining this? Am I becoming arrogant? Should I hide my success? Should I shrink myself to keep the peace? And this is where many people betray themselves. Not because they are weak, but because they are afraid of losing belonging. Belonging is one of the deepest human needs. The brain processes social rejection in the same region as physical pain. So when growth threatens connection, the nervous system interprets it as danger. This is why people sometimes unconsciously sabotage their own potential. They procrastinate. They play small. They avoid fully stepping into their power, not because they lack ability, but because they fear emotional separation. They fear becoming someone their old environment cannot accept. But here is the truth you need to understand. Real friendship does not require you to shrink. Real friendship expands when you expand. Real friendship feels inspired by your growth, not threatened by it. Real friendship celebrates you without comparison, because healthy people don't see your light as a threat. They see it as proof that light is possible. And this brings us to one of the most important psychological lessons of all. Not everyone who walks with you is meant to walk with you forever. Some people are meant for a chapter, not the whole story. Some friendships are based on proximity, not alignment. And alignment becomes visible only when you change. This doesn't mean you need to hate them. It doesn't mean you need to confront them. It simply means you need to see reality clearly, without denial, without guilt, without shrinking yourself, because your life has one responsibility: to become fully yourself, not a smaller version of yourself, not a safer version, not a version designed to protect other people's comfort, but the truest version. And the most beautiful thing is this: when you stop shrinking, you create space for the right people to find you. People who clap without hesitation. People who feel joy, not tension, when you rise. People who don't compete with you because they are too busy becoming themselves. Because true friendship is not a competition. It is a shared expansion. Not me versus you, but me and you growing together. So the real question is not whether some friends secretly compete with you. The real question is, will you shrink to protect their comfort, or will you grow to honor your truth? Because the people meant for your life will never require you to become smaller to stay connected. They will meet you at your growth, not resist it. And sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is not proving your worth to others, but quietly becoming someone who no longer needs to.